स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मायं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतापताकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना ललिता रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं स्वागतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेव श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश राधाकान्ता नमोस्तुते ताप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Shashwin, for a wonderful Manglacharan. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
On behalf of all the devotees assembled here and are going to assemble soon, we offer our humble obeisances, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Prabhuji, we are reading the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and we are on chapter 8. And today we are on text 7, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, you lead and we'll follow.
Okay, so Hare Krishna to all the devotees. My humble respects to all of you, obeisances. So we'll discuss about 8.7. But before I do that, I want to connect it with what's gone before. Because when we consider the verse in terms of what's gone before, we get more from it actually, rather than just considering the verse in isolation. So this chapter is entitled Attaining the Supreme. And the reason for that is because that is mostly what Krishna discusses in this chapter. And attaining the Supreme means how to go back to Godhead, in other words, how to attain the Supreme. So in this chapter, Krishna discusses two classes of personalities who can go back to Godhead. One is the devotee, and the other one is the Sakam Bhakta that we saw at the end of the 7th chapter. Krishna there in the 16th verse of the 7th chapter was first of all discussing different kinds of personalities who sometimes begin to render devotional service to him. So among those personalities, there were three, what we call Mishra Bhaktas. In other words, they're coming to Krishna to render devotional service, but at the same time, their motive is not pure. They're Mishra Bhaktis, their devotion to Krishna is mixed with different desires. So we see that the one was one who was trying to get relief from material distress. Another one was one who wanted wanted monetary input from Krishna. And the third one is the one who wants knowledge, is inquisitive about Krishna and things related to Krishna. But the fourth one is the Jnani. He's very special, actually. He doesn't want anything for himself. He just wants knowledge about Krishna. So these are the three Mishra Bhaktas. They are Bhaktas, but their desire is mixed with their own things as well. So in the last two verses of that chapter, a fourth kind of Mishra Bhakta is explained. One, actually, you can go back to those verses and take a quick look if you like. The 29th verse, another kind of Mishra Bhakta, someone who's a devotee, but his desire for Krishna's devotional service is mixed with his own desire. And this is the one who wants liberation from birth, death, old age, and disease. So he's Mishra as well. He wants something. He wants liberation. So while discussing this Mishra Bhakta, so Krishna mentions certain terms which are little mysterious. In other words, they can be understood in different ways. So the terms in the 29th verse were Brahman, Karma, and Adhyatma. These three terms, which can be understood in different ways. And then also in the 30th verse, Krishna mentions three more terms and explains that if somebody understands Krishna as these three things, he can actually Krishna even at the time of death. So the three terms are the Adibhuta, the governing principle of the material manifestation, because after all, the material manifestation is coming from Krishna. So therefore, he's the governing principle. Also, the Adidaivam, coming from Deva, Deva, meaning the demigods, the governing principle of all the demigods. Krishna actually arranges for them to take their posts and give them their power. So he's the governing principle. And then also the Adiyagya, or the governing principle of all sacrifices. So Krishna is also that personality. So someone who understands Krishna in this way, he says actually that even at the time of death, if one can understand Krishna like this, he can attain him. Actually, even at the time of death, he can face with that calamity. So these six terms which are mentioned here in the 29th verse, Brahman, Karma, and Adhyatma, and the terms which are mentioned here in the 30th verse, the Adibhuta, the Adidaiva, and the Adiyagya, they form Arjuna's questions at the beginning of the next chapter. And you see, Krishna says, can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even at the time of death. So this is the other question that Arjuna asks. So 7 questions are asked by Arjuna. What are these three things? What is the Brahman? What is Karma? What is the Adhyatma? What is the Adibhuta? What is the Adidaiva? And what is the Adiyagya? So these are the things we see at the beginning of the chapter. Attaining the Supreme. You can look with me as I go through these verses. Arjuna inquired, "O my Lord, a Supreme Person, what is Brahman?" Actually, what is that actually? That term can be understood in different ways. No? So Arjuna wants clarity. What are you referring to here? You know, when you said in this 29th verse, you can just take a quick look at it. Intelligent persons are endeavoring from old age and disease, take refuge in me in devotional service. They're actually Brahman. You know, so what does that mean actually? That they're actually Brahman. And then also, what are fruitive activities? Karma. That is generally the understanding of the word karma. That we perform an activity in order that we can get some result. So it's fruitive. We're performing the activity in a way that we want a result. We want the fruit of the activity. Just like when you plant a seed in the ground, we do that because we want the fruit of that plant. And it takes time to fructify into a plant which gives something back. So similarly, activities are like that. They take time to fructify. You have to put an effort in. And if you do everything right, you get a certain result. So then, what is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? So Arjuna is asking about these terms, you know. In other words, I want a clear understanding of what they are. And then in the next verse, who is the Lord of sacrifice? The Adiyagya that was mentioned by Krishna. Who is that Lord of sacrifice and how does he live in the body? Because the Lord is living in our body, actually. So how does he do that? Oh, Madhusudan, Krishna, because there is doubt in Arjuna's mind, and therefore he refers to Krishna in this way. Madhusudana means the killer of the Madhu demon. So similarly, there is doubt in Arjuna's mind, which is in likening to a demon, and therefore he wants Krishna to destroy that doubt by giving definitive answers. And then, how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? That's the bulk of this chapter, actually. Krishna quickly answers the first 6 questions, and the remainder of the chapter is concerned with this business. Hence, the chapter is called Attaining the Supreme. How can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? Because it's a very important question. If I'm going to be a devotee, Krishna's promising in the Bhagavad Gita, "You my devotee, you come to me." So how can we remember you? That is required, actually. So most of the chapter is concerned with the 2 classes of person who can remember Krishna at the time of death. One is the devotee, and the other one is this Mishra Bhakta that was mentioned in the 29th verse of the last chapter. Dandavat Pranam. from Kirtika to Patel and everyone. Yes, Dandavat Pranam. Why not? So this is what we're studying in this chapter. Mostly it is attaining the supreme. This Mishra Bhakta who wants release from birth and death, and also the devotee. These are the two persons who can attain Krishna at the time of death, because that is a very disturbed situation. So these other 6 items which have been mentioned, Brahman, Karma, Adhyatma, Adiyagya, Adidaiva, and Adibhuta. These terms Krishna is going to quickly explain to Arjuna, and very nice as well, very succinct and definitive answers just very quickly. Because the thing really Krishna wants to get onto is to help his devotees. How can those devotees of mine remember me at death? So this is the sum and substance of this chapter. Now Krishna from 3 and 4 begins to answer these questions. In fact, from 1 to 4, it's the questions and the answers, just quickly. And then the 7th question is the bulk of the chapter. So this is 3. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said the indestructible transcendental living entity is called Brahman, because he is actually. He's different Brahman. There is Brahman and there is Para Brahman. The Para Brahman is the source of the Brahman. He's the supreme Brahman. But we are also Brahman because we are a living entity. We're spiritual nature. We learned that in the 7th chapter, where Krishna first of all said there are these 8 separated energies of mind: earth, water, air, fire, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. These are my separated material nature, Krishna was saying. And then in the next verse he says, but there's another nature, which is superior nature, which comprises the living entities. So we are superior nature. We're also Brahman. We're also made of that spiritual substance. But there is a difference. We are tiny, insignificant. We are atomic. The word anu is used in Sanskrit. It means atomic. But Krishna, on the other hand, is vibhu. He's without limit. So there are 2 Brahmans. There is the Para Brahman, that is the supreme, that is Lord Krishna. And then there is the little Brahman, that is the living entities. So the Supreme Personality of God said the indestructible transcendental living entities called Brahman, because that is the essence of us. That is who we really are. And you notice Krishna mentions here we're indestructible. We learned that in the 2nd chapter especially, that this living entity can't be cut by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. He's eternal, ever existing, primeval. He's not killed when the body is killed. This is what we learn. So Krishna is re-emphasizing this point here, that we are actually Brahman. We are made of the same substance, but there is also a difference. This is our philosophy, actually. Our philosophy is the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. This philosophy is simultaneously that Krishna is one with and different from everything in the creation. So we are one with Krishna in the sense that we are made of Brahman, but we are different from Krishna in the sense of quantity. Qualitatively, we're one. We're made of spiritual substance, but quantitatively, we're different. We're very, very tiny, whereas Krishna is without limit. So is Brahman and Para Brahman. So that the Brahman that Arjuna is asking about is the living entity. So therefore, the Supreme Personality of God said the indestructible, transcendental living entity is called Brahman, and his eternal nature is called Adhyatma, the self. Now, the self can mean different things, actually. The Atma can mean the body. It can even mean the mind and the senses even. But we usually understand the term to mean who we really are, that we are spirit soul. So that the eternal nature of the living entity is his self, the Adhyatma, and that means we're actually eternal, we're servant of Krishna, we're pleasure seeking. That is our nature, that is the self, that is the real self. When we say I, myself, can mean different things. But when Krishna says the self, he doesn't mean the body, because the body is not really the self. It is simply animated by the presence of the spirit soul. And then action pertaining to the development of material bodies. Actually, karma can be defined in different ways. You can slip on a banana skin and you land on your butt, and your friend tells you that's your karma. That's one understanding of the word karma. Another understanding that we learned in the 4th chapter is that karma is activities which are sanctioned by the Veda, but they produce material reactions. No? So there's another definition. So Krishna is using that latter definition because he's saying that action pertaining to the development of material bodies. We're performing activity now. It may be sanctioned by the Veda, but it's developing another body. And that body will manifest when we leave this one. So that is what karma really is, actually. It is any activity which generates another body. So Krishna is giving very, very definitive answers to these questions. You know, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are karma? What is karma? Very, very definitive answers to these questions. Because Krishna really wants to get on to the last thing, which we're coming to. So now in text 4, best among embodied beings, the physical nature, which is constantly changing. So if you look around you, you'll find that is called the Prakriti. Its characteristic is it never remains the same. It's endlessly mutable. It is constantly changing. Even things that don't look like they're changing, they actually are changing. Like even a rock or a table or a sofa that you may be sitting on, or the parts of your lampshade. They don't look as if they're changing, but we know from our study of physics that the crystal lattice is vibrating. And sometimes even they're giving off a smell, which means that some of the molecules of that substance are being liberated from the surface. And then also anything we care to name, if we come back in 1,000 years, it will have deteriorated. So everything in this material world is constantly changing. So that with the constantly changing physical nature. And that is called the Adibhuta, the material manifestation. That is all manifest by Lord Krishna actually. And its nature is that it's always changing in different ways. And we can experience that in the body we're in. It's made of material nature and it's constantly changing. Every 28 days, the surface of your skin becomes detached from the body. If you clean any space that you're living in, you'll know that. It is said that some horrific proportion, like something like 80% of the dust that accumulates in a room where you're living is dead skin cells that your body has given off. It's changing all the time. Everything material is always changing. So that is the Adibhuta. And it's actually the interesting part of these terms is the first part of the word, the Adi. Adi means the origin, the original. So in all cases, Krishna is the origin of things, the Adibhuta, the Adidaiva, the Adiyagya. Krishna is the origin of it. So the material mass, the universal form of the Lord, which includes the demigods, like those of sun and the moon, is called the Adidaiva, from Deva. Deva means the demigods. So when we put it in this word, the Adidaiva, it means those things which are related to the demigods. The material universal form. It is Krishna, but it's a material form of Krishna. He provides all those ingredients, and the demigods are also part of that. The demigods are also annihilated when the universe is annihilated. So Krishna is providing all those things. And Prabhupada is giving purport in the verse. Actually, Prabhupada does that a lot. Sometimes to help us understand, he gives the purport, part of the purport in the verse. Because if you look in the Sanskrit, you won't find the words for the sun and the moon. But Prabhupada is explaining. He's saying the sun and the moon, the demigods, like the sun and the moon. So we get the idea what Prabhupada's talking about, what the translation Krishna is saying. So Prabhupada is giving us a little hint here. The demigods like the sun and the moon. They are all coming from the Adidaiva. And Krishna is the source of that, actually. And he says, then I, the Supreme Lord, represented as the super soul in the heart of every living being, am called the Adiyagya. Because Krishna is the recipient of all the results of sacrifice, actually. It comes to him. It may go to the demigods, but ultimately speaking, Krishna is the result, gives the result of all those yagyas. And he is residing in the heart because the super soul is everywhere. He's residing in the heart because Arjuna asked, where is he situated in the body? So we see in this way that these, just very quickly, Krishna has answered these 6 questions. What is the Brahman? What is karma? What is the Adhyatma? What is the Adidaiva, the Adibhuta, and the Adiyagya? Quickly, just put these, given the answers and moved on. Because these terms can be understood in different ways. So Krishna is giving definitive answers. But the real question, actually, is how can the devotees remember Krishna at the time of death? That is the real question. Because Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is concerned with making us into devotees. Krishna wants us to become devotees. That is the point of the Bhagavad Gita. Just surrender yourself to me. Don't worry, I'll deliver you from all sinful actions. Give up all your dharmas. Krishna wants us to become his devotee. And therefore Arjuna is asking this question. Because Krishna is very concerned with his devotees. How can we remember you at the time of death? Because Krishna said in several places, if it's like this, you can come to me at the time of death. You understand the transcendental nature of my pastimes and activities, my birth and activities. You can come to me, actually. Surely you'll come to me, Sri Krishna says. So in other words, Arjuna is very concerned with that. How can I'm supposed to be your devotee, and I'm faced now on this battlefield that I may die. And you're telling me if I remember you as the Adibhuta, the Adiyogi, and the Adidaiva, I'll be able to remember you at the time of death. But I want more help. How will I be able to remember you at the time of death? It's a very poignant question for a devotee, actually. And this is why the rest of this chapter is devoted to it. Two classes of persons who can remember Krishna at the time of death. One is the Mishra Bhakta. He's a Bhakta, he's a devotee, but his devotion is mixed with a desire for liberation. So he's a Sakam Bhakta also, or a mixed Bhakta, Mishra Bhakta. And then also the other class of personality who can attain Krishna at the time of death is the devotee. So these are the two personalities which Krishna is discussing in this chapter. Okay, so the next section is actually remembering Krishna at the time of death. How do you do that? Arjuna is asking, how can we remember you at the time of death? So then in these verses from 5 to 9, 5 to 8, I beg your pardon, Krishna is answering. And we're looking at 7 today. So the first 4 verses, quickly Krishna answers those questions, those 6 questions of Arjuna, which are related to the 7th chapter, because those terms have been mentioned by Krishna. And now from 5 to 8, because Arjuna is mentioning, okay, how can we remember you at the time of death? Krishna is giving some hints. So that is the section we're studying now. So this is the key verse, 5, this antakale, at the end of life, actually. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone, and once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. So you can understand from the word and that it is connected to the previous verse, because Krishna was just saying, and I, the super soul, the Supreme Lord, represented as the super soul in the heart of every embodied being, I'm called the Adiyagya. And this is how you remember me. This is how you do it. It's connected to the previous verse. Whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone. That is a very important word, alone. It means nothing else. In other words, our consciousness must be completely absorbed in Krishna, then we will go to Krishna. So that's not an easy thing for us. We're aspiring to remember Krishna at the time of death. So to remember Krishna alone. You can't have anything else in there. Otherwise, you'll come back as a devotee, but you'll come back as well. You have to work on your devotion so that you can remember Krishna alone. So that is the trick. So we are practicing now. As devotees, you must practice. We'll talk more about this in a minute. Okay, then 6. As Krishna wants to emphasize this point, that you have to think of me. This is the whole essence of the Bhagavad Gita, actually. When we come to 9th chapter, you'll see that. But the last verse of the 9th chapter is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. And Krishna says there, always engage your mind in thinking of me. That is the essence of everything, actually. So this is what we are being practiced to do, actually, to remember Krishna always. And that is not easy because we have so many material attachments. Krishna is giving us clues here. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, as son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. Whatever is your deepest attachment, whatever that is, that will rise to the surface. However you've spent your life, what you've meditated on during your life, what your attachments are, they will come to the surface at the time of your death. Because the time of your death, it's like being thrown out of your house without any warning. Imagine, I don't know what you call him in the country you're living in, but we call him the bailiff here. The bailiff is coming, he's knocking on the door and he's saying, okay, Shyamananda, now you must leave. Just give me a minute, I just want to pack my suitcase. And the bailiff tells you, sorry, no time to pack the suitcase, you must just go. At that time will be anxiety. Therefore, imagine we're living in this body. I don't know what it is, For me, it's 64 years. I'm living in this body 64 years, and now the time of death is coming. So it's an extremely disturbed situation. You've got used to living in this body, and now you have to leave. So at that time, things become very disturbed. So what happens is that the predominating consciousness of your life will come to the surface. It'll just naturally come to the surface, whatever you're attached to, whatever your deepest attachment, that will carry you into the next body. So at that time, we want Krishna to come to the surface. We want to be so practiced in remembering Krishna that even under these circumstances, like Krishna said at the end of the 7th chapter, if you know me as the Adiyagya, the Adidaiva, and the Adibhuta, you can remember me. Know me and remember me, even when faced with your death. So we have to practice it. You can understand why Arjuna is asking, no? Okay, tell me, how do we do that? What is it we have to do to remember your death? Because you know what? I don't know about you, but I'm kind of fed up of this material world. Do you want to come back again? Let's ask. Let's take a straw poll. If you don't want to come back again, you can do this. If you can do your reactions, raise your hand, or you can put your thumbs up like that. If you don't want to come back, yeah, you see, it's good, but some people are not sure. I'm a bit worried about them. We've got a couple of people who put their hand 3, 4. Okay. Some people are not so sure. Okay, now it's coming. Yeah, we want to leave. So how to do that, actually? How can we possibly do that? That we can be in the situation where we can remember Krishna at the time of death. We have to practice. We have to practice. And therefore, in the verse we're studying today, Krishna is giving hints. And actually, as we move through Bhagavad Gita, Krishna more and more talks about this principle of remembering him always, actually. It is said that it's the sum and substance of all religious knowledge, actually. There is a book, when we study this book, we might study that book. We have to ask our host and see what she says. But when we study this book, there is a book which devotees study in the beginning. It is called the Nectar of Devotion. It is like an activity book for devotees, because if you're going to remember Krishna, you have to do stuff to help you remember. So the Nectar of Devotion is talking about that. It's like an activity book for devotees. So in the beginning of that book, Rupa Goswami says, look, we're going to discuss pure devotional service in this book. But before we discuss that, let's consider what is the essence of all religious knowledge. So I wonder if anybody can tell me that. Because you're all like, I can't see if you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, but I'm assuming you are. So I wonder if anybody can tell me what is the essence of all religious knowledge, just summed up in a couple of sentences. Can anyone say?
To go back to Krishna.
Yeah, that's good.
Love of God.
Yes, but how are you going to do that?
Through bhakti in the stages.
Yeah, but how are you going to do the bhakti?
Sadhana.
How are you going to do the sadhana?
Chanting the names of the Lord. Man mana bhava mad bhakto mad yadi.
Okay, we're getting to it. Man mana bhava mad bhakto. That's what Rupa Goswami says. He says, the essence of all religious knowledge is two things. One is a positive injunction, and the other is a negative injunction. So they go together like this. Always remember Krishna. That's the positive injunction, and never forget him. That's the negative one. So Rupa Goswami says that is the essence of all religious knowledge. That if you want to reduce all the Vedas down to two statements, one positive, one negative, that's what it is. So Krishna's telling us that as well. That if you remember me alone, then you come to me. So this is the essence of everything, actually, just to remember Krishna. So now in today's verse, we're getting some hints. So, Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu. You can unmute and chant with us. Let's try that again. Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu.
Tasmat Sarveshu
Veshu.
Mananushmara Yudhyacha.
Mananushmara Yudhyacha
Maya Pita Manobuddhi.
Maya
Prita Manobuddhi.
Mamevasyasya Sangshayaha.
Mamevashyasya samshaya.
Oh, you chant so nicely. Thank you very much. Word for word. Tasmat.
Tasmat
Therefore.
Therefore.
It's a conclusion. Now we're drawing from what Krishna said, he's drawing a conclusion. Sarveshu.
Sarveshu
At all.
At all
Kaleshu.
Kaleshu
Times.
Time
Mam.
Mam
Me.
Me
Who's speaking?
Speaking.
Who's speaking? Who's speaking the verse?
Who is speaking?
Krishna, yes. So he's referring to
Oh,
himself.
sorry, yeah.
Anushmara,
Anushmara.
go on remembering.
Go on remembering.
It literally means to follow remembering. Smara means to remember and An means to follow. So go on remembering. Yudhya,
Yudhya.
fight.
Fight.
Cha,
Cha.
also.
Also.
Mai,
My.
unto me.
Unto
Me.
Arpita,
Arpita.
surrendering.
Surrendering.
Manaha,
Manaha.
mind.
Mind.
Buddhihi,
Buddhi.
intellect.
Intellect.
Mam,
Ma.
unto me.
Unto me.
Ava,
Eva.
surely.
Surely.
Eshasi,
Yashasi.
you will attain.
You will attain.
Asangshayaha,
Samshaya.
beyond a doubt.
Beyond
Beyond
a doubt.
doubt.
So Prabhupada takes these word for word meanings and renders the following translation. Therefore, Arjuna, therefore, because we've discussed now, whatever you remember at the time of death, that state you will attain without fail. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting, with your activity dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. Please repeat, therefore,
Therefore.
Arjuna,
Arjuna.
you should always think of me
You should
always
always
think
think of
of
me
in the form of Krishna,
in the form of
Krishna.
Krishna.
and at the same time
And at the same time,
carry out
carry out
your prescribed duty of fighting,
your
prescribed
duty
duty
of
of
fighting
with your activities dedicated to me
with your
your activities dedicated to me,
and your mind and intelligence fixed on me.
and
and
your
your
mind
mind and intelligence fixed on me.
You will attain me without doubt.
You will
You will
attain
attain without a doubt.
The Krishna is very emphatic, without doubt. Just like he said in the last two verses, if you remember me only, you'll come to me without doubt. And whatever you remember, you'll attain that without fail. Now, actually, in order to execute this, what Krishna is saying, then you fix your mind on me. But you must still do your duty. We can't escape. And Arjuna's duty is what? Fighting. But we have our duty. Luckily, our duty is not so difficult. Arjuna's duty was extremely difficult, actually. So if Krishna thinks Arjuna can do it in that situation, then what about us? Should be easier, no? Should be easier. Arjuna's situation is extreme. He's got to fight with family members, shoot arrows and kill them. Arjuna's situation is extremely difficult. And Krishna's even telling him, yeah, you think of me and you go on, you fight. That is your prescribed duty. So you fight and you think of me. So the same is true for us. This is what we must practice in our lives. We must do our duty. We can't neglect that. People are depending on us. People have expectation of us. We have so many duties. We can't neglect that. But at the same time, we must think of Krishna always. Because when the time of death comes, that's what will rise in your consciousness. And they'll send the chariot for you from the spiritual world. And you'll get into that chariot and you'll be gone. No more birth and death. So we have to practice, because whatever we think of builds up within us. Whatever you think of, it's like adding little drops of thoughts to your consciousness. And over time that builds up. Whatever we think of, actually, we will attain that state without fail. And therefore Krishna says, therefore, you think of me. I notice Krishna doesn't say, well, you think of me, but it doesn't matter how you do it. What does he say? He says, in my form as Krishna. So Krishna is very special. Krishna is the origin of everything, actually. We'll see that in the 10th chapter. We already saw that in the 7th chapter. Krishna said that there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls on a thread. So can't just think of Krishna in any form, but rather Krishna is recommending you think of me in this form, two-arm form, from spiritual world. Very special, actually. It is the original Krishna from which everything is emanating, and everything will emanate, and everything will be absorbed back into him as well. The original Krishna. So it's a very wonderful verse we get to study today. Therefore, Arjuna should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your duty of fighting. These two things. Do your duty, think of Krishna. In this way, everything becomes absorbed. With your activities dedicated to me, Arjuna was being asked to fight for me. Krishna says, I want you to do it. Later on in the 11th chapter, he shows him what the outcome will be, even before he's fought. So the outcome is already decided. So Krishna is just asking Arjuna, you become my instrument. Because Krishna likes to do things through his devotees. So he tells him, okay, you fight, but at the same time, you think of me. And then with your activities, your fighting dedicated to me, and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without a doubt. Even at the time of death, like Krishna was saying in the previous chapter. You understand me, who I actually am. Actually, if we understand who Krishna is, we'll be able to think of him very easily, actually. Because Krishna means the one who is supremely attractive. Krishna means, because it comes from the Sanskrit verb karsha. Karsha means to attract. And in Sanskrit, the nouns, the names of things come from what they do. So therefore, Krishna means they're all attractive. Krishna can attract anybody because he's the supreme attractive. We just have to remember that. We have to remind ourselves. And how do we do that? We do that by hearing about Krishna, by associating with his devotees, by chanting his holy names, by taking his prasadam. The idea is to fill our lives with different things that whereby we can always remember Krishna at every moment and never forget him. And this way we'll fulfill the potential of our lives and make our lives successful. Okay, and Krishna's underlining here without a doubt. If you do this, if you think of me always, with your activities dedicated to me, with your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will certainly attain me without doubt. It's Krishna's promise. This promise occurs in several places in Bhagavad Gita. This is another place. If you know the transcendental nature of my birth and activities, you won't take birth in this material world again. Krishna's promise is there over and over in Bhagavad Gita. And when Krishna promises something, you can understand it's a very special promise. Krishna may break his promise, but he won't break this promise. To his devotees, he never breaks his promise, actually. Even he'll break his own promise to keep his word to his devotees. And the example of that is Arjuna himself. But Arjuna was being overcome by Bhishma Dev. And something had to be done. Otherwise, Arjuna would have been killed by Bhishma Dev. He was overcoming him because Arjuna didn't want to fight at his full capacity because he loved his grandfather. So Krishna, in order to stop that situation, he had to get down off the chariot, and he picked up a broken chariot wheel and he charged Bhishma. He was going to kill him, actually. So then Arjuna realized, oh no, Krishna can't break his promise. But actually that was Bhishma's vow. I'm going to make you break your promise. So Krishna will do that to protect his devotees. But when he makes a promise to a devotee, nothing will break that, actually. So Krishna is promising us here. We simply have to practice. So this is the purport. This instruction to Arjuna is very important for all men engaged in material activities. Actually, we're engaged in material activities to some extent as well. We can't avoid that because not pure devotees yet. So Prabhupada is speaking to us as well, even though we're aspiring devotees. The Lord does not say that one should give up his prescribed duties or engagements. And the same is true for us. We can't give up. Rather, we should stay in our position, whatever it is, and take Krishna into our lives. When we become very advanced, then we can, take sannyas and we can dedicate mind, body, words, and everything to Krishna. But mostly in our positions now, we're not in that position. We're in a position where we have material engagements and duties which we must perform. So Prabhupada is making this point very emphatically. We can't give them up, even though we're trying to be a devotee. It's better to stay in our position, execute our duties nicely, and gradually take Krishna consciousness into our lives. So the Lord does not say one should give up his prescribed duties or engagements. One can continue them and at the same time think of Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna. You can do that in any circumstance, actually. I think it was Woody Allen who said one time that 90% of life is just showing up. You know, our lives are like, if we just show up at the place we're supposed to be at a certain time, then most of our life things get done. So actually, for many activities, it's not difficult actually. Especially the ladies know this because they're supposed to be better multitasking environments than men are. I don't know if that's true, but they do say that. So actually, we can chant Krishna's name always. That's our goal, actually. The Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the 8 stanzas that he left behind, when he left this world, he left 8 stanzas behind. So in one of those verses, he said, Kirtanya Sadahari. He said, our idea is that we want to chant Krishna's name always. Actually, why just do 16 rounds? Why not chant Krishna's name always? And actually, Mahaprabhu said that's very easy for one who's very humble, who's lower than the straw in the street and more humble than the tree, more tolerant than a tree, and offers all respects to others, but expects no respect for himself. He said, for one who's in that mood, chanting the holy name is very easy. So this is our aspiration, that whatever we're doing, to first, Anusmarana is first, to go on remembering Krishna. And how we can do that, Prabhupada is giving the clue here. One can continue them and at the same time think of Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna. And it's so amazing that there are no rules and regulations. Normally, for mantras and all this kind of stuff, there's very many rules and regulations. But in this age, there's no rules and regulations. You can chant that anytime, any place, anywhere. No one can stop you. No? You may not be able to do it out loud, but you can do it in your head. You can chant in your head. It's called Manasa Japa. You can do that. But if you can chant out loud, that's better, because that way you won't fall asleep if you chant out loud. But sometimes you chant in your head, you may fall asleep, so that's not a good idea. So we chant out loud. But if you can't chant out loud, or pick your favorite melody from the CD you were listening to 3 weeks last Tuesday and chant that melody. Sing. Sometimes it's easier to sing Krishna's Mahamantra in your head than it is to chant. But however it works for you, that's the point. Do your duty, whatever you have to do. But at the same time, remember Krishna by chanting his holy name. And that's the easiest process, actually. Because you don't need anything for that. You don't need any props. You just need to put the record player on in your mind like that and let it play. And think, because Krishna's name and Krishna are non-different. So when we chant Krishna's name, we're associating with Krishna. And if you're associating with somebody, can you remember them? You can actually, no? So Prabhupada's giving the clue. This will free one from material contamination and engage the mind and intelligence in Krishna. Of course, you may be not so expert at that now, but by practice it will come. That by chanting Krishna's name, gradually our mind and intelligence will be absorbed in Krishna. You can't avoid it. If you chant sincerely, especially without offense, then very quickly that comes actually, because Krishna and his name are non-different. And even we feel that in the very beginning. You know, even the first time we heard somebody chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, we could feel Krishna's presence a little bit, all of us. And when we chant sincerely, listening very carefully to Krishna's name, can feel his presence. No? And it's become more expert. And eventually you get to see Krishna. And then you get to appreciate his qualities, his gunas. And then finally you get to enter into Krishna's pastimes. So this is the process, but it requires practice. Prabhupada was very fond of that expression that I grew up with as a boy as well. My father used to tell me that. Stephen, practice makes perfect. He used to tell me like that. My father, my first guru, he used to tell me like that. Prabhupada was very fond of that expression. Practice makes perfect, actually. The more we practice it, the better we get. And the more Krishna helps. Our process is so simple, actually. This is why Prabhupada's slogan was chant and be happy. That was Prabhupada's mission statement. You know, just chant and be happy. Because we're supposed to be happy. And by chanting Krishna's name, we will become happy. So it's a very simple process in essence, actually. And Prabhupada is giving the clue here. Krishna says, always remember me in my form as Krishna. How to do that? Well, it may not be so easy in the beginning, but at least we can chant Krishna's name. And gradually this way. And anything you can do to remember Krishna. Engage your mind in always thinking of me, become my devotee, worship me, offer your obeisances to me. And all the 64 angas which are mentioned in the Nectar of Devotion, as much as possible, because practice makes perfect. We are trying to execute something called sadhana bhakti. Sadhana bhakti means bhakti in practice. We're practicing to do it, you know. It's like I don't know if you then know this golfer, what's his name? Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods, actually, when he was practicing to become a golfer, every day he would hit 1,000 golf balls. Every day, without fail. You know, he'd go to the driving range and he'd hit 1,000 golf balls. So if you do that for long enough, what happens? Assuming you have a little bit of skill, you become a brilliant golfer. That's what happened to him by practice. You know, we see that in a child. When a young child is just a few months old, they begin to try to walk. No one teaches the child to walk. No one does that. You don't pick up your little child and say, okay, you put the right foot here and you kind of change your bodily balance a little bit. Then you put the left foot there. No one teaches a child to walk, but the child learns to walk by suitable practice. No? And everyone does that. If you're in a room where a young child is beginning to walk, everyone does that. Everyone encourages, they hold out their hands and they say, come. By practicing the walking propensity, one becomes expert. Now you don't even think about it. We just do it automatically. So it's the same process. Krishna consciousness is the same process. We practice the things which are given by Srila Prabhupada, the Acharyas, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Very simple process mostly. Just chant Krishna's name. We practice and gradually the remembrance of Krishna comes more and more. There are other things we can do. We can hear about Krishna's pastimes. These two things are very, very potent. We can hear about Krishna's pastimes, hearing about Krishna from his devotees, hearing about Krishna directly. We're studying Bhagavad Gita now. We get to hear Krishna directly as if he's speaking to us, because the Bhagavad Gita is Krishna in the form of written word. We can associate with Krishna through his prasadam, through his devotees, by performing devotional service, by there are so many ways. By chanting our beads, by serving the deity, by serving the devotees. The idea is to practice. And in the beginning, we need a few clues. We need some process, how we're going to do that. Bhagavad Gita is mostly Sambandha Gyan, actually. Krishna is trying to convince us that you need to become my devotee. Not because Krishna needs us, but because we need Krishna. Because we're pleasure seeking and we can't get it done here. We need Krishna. So he's trying to convince us to become a devotee because he's good for us. But then when we're convinced, then we need to know what to do. So there are some clues in Bhagavad Gita, some abhideya, some process is given. So here Krishna is describing the process. Just remember me. What's your problem? You know, just remember me. That is the process for becoming a devotee by practice. So Krishna is giving us the clue in this verse, actually. It's such a nice verse. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in my form of Krishna. Always think of, just do that, you know, somehow or other, whatever works for you. At the same time, carry out prescribed duty of fighting. Not fighting for us. Well, in some cases it might be. You might be fighting with your family members or your teachers or the kids on the block. I don't know. But, you know, hopefully it's not like Arjuna's position. It's easier for us because our prescribed duty is not so difficult, actually. With your activities dedicated to me, you know, Krishna, I'm going to try and dedicate all my activities to you now. When I'm cooking, yeah, I want to eat, but let it be your prasadam. You know? Just simply, we can introduce ways into our lives which are practice, which step by step will bring us to Krishna's lotus feet by practice. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind, intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. And then for us, there'll be no more trouble, no more rebirth, no more birth, death, old age, and disease, no threefold miseries of this material life, the miseries of mind and body, the miseries from other living entities, and the miseries from the devas. There'll be no more of this stuff, which is actually what we want. So Krishna is laying it out for us here so simply and so nicely, so wonderfully, actually. Just remember me, and in this form of Krishna, and dedicate all your activities to me. And it's not difficult because Krishna, after all, is the all-attractive. The more we hear, the more we want to hear. That's what Sanjay says at the end of the Bhagavad Gita. The more I hear from you, the more I want to hear the nectar of your word. Sorry, it's Arjuna who says that, actually. In 11th chapter, he says that. The more I hear of you, the more I want to hear the nectar of your words. That is what Arjuna says. So if we practice, we will also come to that platform. We'll come to the by practice, by hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet, by the practice of devotional service. More and more, we want to remember Krishna. So in the beginning, it's difficult. You start with a little snowball this big and you roll it in the snow. And in the beginning it's difficult, you know, but then eventually you come to the top of the hill and you can let it go and it will roll down the hill on its own and gather more and more snow. So in the beginning, it may be a little difficult, but if we practice with determination, gradually it will become easy. And before we know where we are, we'll go back to Godhead. So this is what Krishna is emphasizing here. You'll come to me. You'll definitely come to me. You'll attain me without doubt. So this is our meditation. So I'm hoping, I'm giving 10 minutes, I'm hoping there'll be discussion about this point, because this is the essence of everything is given in this verse. You just simply remember me, do your duty and remember me, and you'll find that you will come to me without doubt. So the essence of everything is given in this verse. So I wonder if there's comment or question, or I'm hoping realizations. Manasi Ganga, please share with us. Manasi Ganga Mataji, please share something with us. Because she's a very senior devotee, she's got a lot of realization. Okay, she unmuted.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Manasi Ganga Mataji, it's so nice to see your lotus-like face.
Oh, yeah. Cut it out. No, I just came late to start with. And then number two, seniority doesn't mean knowledge. You know, it just means being older.
But that's
So-
not true in your case. You're very senior. I know you have so much realization.
No. But anyway, I'm happy I could join and I'm happy I heard you. Let others share their realization. But I'd like to thank different devotees who've joined. Pundrik Prabhu from Kisumu, Ravi from Nairobi, Stephanie all the way from America, which is really austere coming from America to join this program, you know. So thanking them all, but let them all share their realizations and whatever.
Oh,
Do you
Manasi Ganga,
recognize-
you're disappointing me.
No, I didn't hear the whole thing. How can I?
Yeah, come on, Manasi Ganga. This is very simple stuff. Remembering Krishna. Give us some of your realizations.
Shamananda, don't put me on the spot.
Okay,
Seriously.
I won't put you on the spot. Please forgive me.
Let others speak. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, come on, folks, share with me. Dear devotees, please share something with me. When you hear this, when you hear Krishna telling us, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. So when you hear... Yes, Krishna, Prem is pointing that out. Without doubt, Krishna is saying, if you remember me without doubt, he said, you will certainly come to me. Whatever you remember, you'll certainly attain that state without to fail. And here in this verse, if you remember me, you'll come to me without doubt. Why do you think Krishna is being so emphatic?
Okay, Prabhuji,
Prema
many
to show
questions.
her face in there.
Sorry.
Sorry, Manasi?
Tell Prema to show herself and speak.
Okay. She's going to show herself now. Here she comes.
Sorry, Manasi Mataji. Actually, I wanted to share that Krishna is really emphatic in verses 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, just because that's the section Krishna is really emphasizing, just to remember him. Because just by remembering him, we can attain
Full
Krishna.
success.
Yeah.
So she's showing herself too. Is that enough or you want more?
No more.
Must we come to Nairobi then?
Somebody asked the question.
Yeah, and I think Vishal had his hand up there at one
Yeah,
point.
so there's a question from Vishal Ravi. Prabhuji has a question as well. So first Vishal can ask and then Ravi Prabhuji can ask.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
My
Krishna.
question was really, again, I mean, it's guaranteed that we will attain Krishna without any doubt if we can really focus and practice. And you know, we've had several of us have had realizations to that extent, but we keep dipping in and out. But one of the things in text 5, Krishna says, is we will attain his nature. And I was just wondering whether you could maybe expound on that. What does it mean by attaining his nature? And sometimes he says we'll attain him. Is it like the ocean becoming the sea?
You see, sometimes the structure of the Sanskrit demands that you can't use a certain word because the Sanskrit language is very strict, actually. And especially when we're writing, our Krishna in this case is speaking deep philosophy. Therefore, the structure of the Sanskrit is rigid. You know, there has to be a certain number of syllables, you know, in the line. Excuse me. And then also there are rules about how the structure of the Sanskrit must go. It must work in terms of meter and also in terms of rhyme. It's poetry. And therefore, actually, there's some words. Sanskrit is a very rich language, actually. So you may not be able to use the word there because it doesn't fit, but you can use another word which means the same thing. So that is what Krishna has done here, actually, because Krishna's nature and Krishna are non-different. They're the same, actually. Krishna's nature and Krishna are the same because there's no difference between Krishna's nature and Krishna. So therefore, although it seems to be a different statement, it's not actually. It's the same thing. But because of the structure of the poetry, and also because Krishna likes to embellish as well. Actually, Krishna tells, there's a conversation in the Srimad Bhagavatam between Uddhava, who was the last person to get instruction from Krishna before he left the planet, and Krishna. So in that discussion, one thing Krishna says to Uddhava, is that I like it when, you know, the Sanskrit is structured in a certain way that you have to dig into the verse to understand it properly. When things are not just so obvious. Krishna says, I really like that. So he's kind of done the same here. But, you know, we have to dig into that a little bit. What does that mean, actually, Krishna's nature? But Krishna's nature and Krishna are the same. So although it appears to be different, it's actually the same thing. Is that
Krishna? Yeah, that's really good, really useful.
okay? So there are others who spoke. There are other things. No?
Ravi Prabhuji, please ask your question.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Ravi.
So this condition or injunction where Krishna has put that we remember him at the time of death, I think it's a very unfair condition considering we're supposed to remember him throughout. And at the time of that, surely it could be any circumstances bringing around that. And to remember him may not be possible, we may not think of it. But all my life, for sake of argument, maybe I've done my rounds, I've done this, I've done that. And at the time of death, maybe I'm in an accident or something, I'm unable to think of him. So why should I be left out?
Okay.
Why should that
It's a
be
very
there?
nice question, Ravi. It's a very nice question. I'm sure a lot of devotees are thinking this same thing, but you've had the courage to ask. So we thank you for that. You know, one time Prabhupada was asked this by his intimate disciples. You know, that we're trying our best to serve you. We're following your instructions. We're chanting our rounds. We're trying to spread this movement. You know, we're trying our best. What happens if we come to that time at the time of death and we can't remember Krishna? And Prabhupada said that Krishna will force himself into your mind. He'll actually come to you. He comes to his devotee at the time of death, actually. So if we're sincere in our practice, you know, Prabhupada actually said that. If you follow the 482 principles, chant 16 rounds your whole life, he says, I have the back door key. I've got a key in my pocket. Of course, I can't claim that I've got the back door key, but at least I'll hold this one up and say, Prabhupada said he has the key. So he says, I have the back door key. So he said, don't worry, I'll open the door and I'll let you in. And then another time he said, don't worry, Krishna will come to you if you're sincere in your practice, you know. But for some reason, you're unable to remember Krishna at the time of death, he will come to you, actually. He'll force himself into your mind. So, Ravi, you just do your best and we depend on Krishna. How does that sound to you?
Yeah, that makes sense. But when it is put this way very, very clearly at the time of the death, it's almost a precondition. Prabhupada, of course, to thank him from where he's taken us. But I think he's being a bit gentle on Krishna now by saying, don't worry what Krishna is saying, I'll help you.
Do you know why Krishna is doing that? Why Krishna is being so strict in this verse 5? You remember me alone. See, the thing is, when we're setting a standard for anything, if we're in full consciousness of what we're doing, we should set the highest standard. Isn't it true? Because, you know, if I set the standard up here, then a lot of people will come to this place. and some may even come to this place. But if I set the standard here, then people will come to there. So any teacher worth his salt will set the standard at the highest place, because invariably some people will attain the standard, but invariably there'll be some people who won't. So therefore, if we set the standard at the highest place, then we'll get the most benefit for everyone involved. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, putting
Yes.
it that way, I understand.
You see, once Prabhupada was approached by one of his disciples, and he was reading Prabhupada's books, and especially in the fourth canto, Prabhupada is quite heavy and very strict, you know. So this disciple told Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, you're so strict, you have such a high standard in your books. He says, why is that? And Prabhupada gave a very similar answer. He said, because people will compromise on my instructions. Therefore, I have to give the highest possible standard to try and raise devotees to the highest possible standard. So Krishna is doing the same thing here. He wants us to come to the highest possible standard. And if you try your best sincerely and it hasn't quite worked, then, you know, there's a conversation once where Prabhupada was discussing with a group of disciples, and he was saying at the beginning, he said, you know, you have to be 100% pure to go back to Godhead. And some of the devotees looked very dejected. And then Prabhupada said, okay, he said, well, if you're 90% pure, you can go back to Godhead. And still some of the devotees looking dejected. So Prabhupada thought for a moment, and he said, well, he said, even if you're 80% pure, you can maybe go back to Godhead. And then he got up from where he was sitting and he walked out of the room. And when he came to the doorway, he looked back at the devotees and he said, actually, even if you're 70% pure, you can go back to Godhead. And Prabhupada said, but not less than that, not less than 70%. So it's the same thing, that we try our best. The standard is there. We try our best, and then we leave it up to Krishna if he wants to accept us or not. You know, Prabhupada once said that chanting this Maha Mantra, one thing you can understand it means, Prabhupada said, is Krishna, please accept me. When we're chanting this mantra, we're telling Krishna, Krishna, please accept me. Please accept me. Please accept me. So we try our best, our level best, and then we just see what Krishna decides. So is that all right, Ravi?
And that's great. That's put it very well. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, just a quick one. I think you put it so sweet, everything, so wonderful. But when we were exposed in the wicked world out there, and you're trying to do your job the best, and then you're trying to chant and do all the things. I'm struck with this statement, chant without offense. Now,
Yes.
offenses are so easily, we're tempted all day long. How can one redirect our desire constructively? Because you're caught up with this web that is so destructive. And I'm thinking about simple little things like when my phone is clogged up with Krishna's beautiful darshan, with all the beautiful pictures of him, the images that is portrayed. And then because it's clogged up, you have to delete them. I feel I'm offending. So it's little things like that. And then if it adds up, it comes big and it's so huge.
That's not an offense. You delete, you know, if you're deleting Krishna's pictures to get more Krishna pictures, that's not an offense.
Okay.
But I take your point, Mataji. I take your point. You see, the thing is, this is why practice and direction is required. You know, in devotion, Prabhupada says actually in the beginning, very expert guidance is needed. You know, it's like when we begin anything, we need the teacher most at that time. You know, when we're just beginning a new activity, which we're not so expert at that time, you really need your teacher who knows your nature and can direct you. That we have to practice in a way that works for us. So therefore, the spiritual master is required, actually. We can't do it on our own, actually. We need the spiritual master. So these two things are important, that we need expert guidance and we need to practice in the right way. Gradually, step by step, it will come. And you know, I'm walking proof of that. That's a realization for me, because I'm just an ordinary English boy, nothing special, you know. But because I got such nice guidance in the beginning, actually, I was able to take up this process. And now a little bit down the track, I hope. little bit down the track. And that is because of knowing the proper path, which Prabhupada has laid out, and his followers enunciate that path, and also because of expert guidance. So therefore, we need the other devotees so badly. In the beginning, you know, maybe the devotees en masse, particular ones that we feel attracted to, but then there has to come the point where we need the expert guide, the spiritual master. So if you practice sincerely, that will come actually. And meantime, do your best. You know, when you're having trouble, approach devotees that you feel close to and ask them, you know, what do I do? I'm in this situation. What can I do? What will work? What's practical for me? That is why we need living spiritual master, because we need something which is practical for us with our mentality in our particular situation. That is why expert guidance is needed. So we do our best, take help from the devotees, and pray to Krishna or pray to Prabhupada that he will send that personality to you as your spiritual master. Then it becomes a bit easier. But one is on this path, it will happen. There's a purport in the third canto where Prabhupada says that Krishna will drag you. Once you start this process, Krishna will drag you back to Godhead if necessary. And that's probably just as well in my case. How does that sound, Mother Jolly?
Hare Krishna, yeah, absolutely. I think it was so nice of you to point out the 70%. I think I'll aim for that.
Yeah, me too.
My standard, yeah.
75, you know. But we don't,
75 perhaps.
Yeah, we want to show a little willing. So I'm going for 75. But in order to go for 75, you have to try for 100.
Yeah, sure. So it's a gradual process.
Yeah, gradual
Hare
process.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Thank
Prabhuji,
you,
I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Vinit Shah, who has joined us as well all the way from Kent in the UK. And Vishaka Mataji has a question. Vishaka Mataji, do you want me to read your question? It's on the chat, or do you want to ask?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Why do you, Vishaka Mataji is asking, Prabhuji, why do we keep on forgetting Krishna's name, although we are intending to include him throughout our day?
That is because of our material attachments. You see, there's a choice with the consciousness. The consciousness can flow in the body through material things, through the senses, or it can flow to Krishna's lotus feet. There's not really a third choice. We're either materially engaged or we're Krishna engaged. Now, if we forget, that is because we have very strong material attachments. Our attachments to the material are stronger than Krishna's attachment to Krishna. And therefore, if we're not very strongly attentive, naturally our consciousness will flow in the material. So in order to, it's like weight training. In the beginning, you know, when you go to the gym in the beginning, you can't even lift 5 kilograms. It's a big deal to lift 5 kilograms. But then you work with the personal trainer, and gradually over a period of weeks, hey, lo and behold, you can lift 6 kilograms. And by the end of the year, you can lift 10 or 12 or 15. But it's practice. We have to practice in order that our material attachments don't pull us away from Krishna's lotus feet. So for that, the best way is to practice as much devotional service as we can, and especially chanting Krishna's names, associating with the devotees, taking Krishna prasadam, doing a little service to help the devotees if we can, just as many things as we can fit into our life. And gradually, little by little, we get dragged away by the material less and less, until one day it's 100% Krishna consciousness, and then everything's finished in this material world and we can get out. Is that helpful, Vishaka Mataji, or not?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Prabhu.
There's no magic bullet. We just have to practice the process to the best of our ability. And it solves most of the problems, actually. Is there anything else? Realizations, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, Vishal Prabhuji, you have a question?
I just wanted to share something on
Yes,
on the
please.
point you've just been making. I think it was a story where Mata Kunti asked, Krishna asked her, "What do you want from me? Ask anything." And she said, "Give me problems, because whenever I have problems, I always think of you. Give me problems in life so that I can always think of you and be absorbed in you."
Yeah, actually, we're studying the prayers of Queen Kunti right now. So she says that actually. She delineates all the calamities which had happened to her and her sons, after the time that Maharaj Pandu left. She mentions them all. And she says to Krishna, you know, that it's good we have these difficulties. When we have difficulties, we see you. She meant literally, actually, because they would pray to Krishna and he would come.
He would.
So please send me these calamities over and over again, because when the calamities come, then we see you. And when we see you, then we don't see repeated birth and death like that, because that's a very advanced position. You know, we're not really on that level where we can tell Krishna, you please send me difficulties. We have trouble even when we don't get difficulties. What to speak of when we do. No? But yes, point. This is how a pure devotee prays. Send me difficulties so that I can remember. But we shouldn't pray too much like that. Otherwise we may get into trouble. No? But it's realization for Shal. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Ravi Prabhuji, you had a question. We've been talking about it the whole week this week. Would you like to ask that question, or do you want me to ask for you?
No, please, you go ahead. Please, thank you for me.
We were discussing about the heavenly planets and the Swarglok and the various 7 layers. And Prabhuji wanted to know at what level what is given, so that he can decide where he wants to go, whether he wants to go.
Okay, the first thing I'll say is that why you want to go to a place where it's temporary and you have to come back? Why you want to do that? If you're going to go for something, let's go for the real deal. You know, there's a story like that. I think it's in Mahabharata, where there was one sage who was performing his Vedic yagyas, and they sent the chariot from the Swargaloka. So this sage, you know, wanted to kind of question a little bit. So he asked the chariot driver, "What's it like there?" So then the chariot driver began to describe what it's like in the heavenly planets in the Swargaloka, because the enjoyment there is thousands of times greater than it is here. Some examples are given, actually. It's mentioned, for instance, that the mangoes that grow in the Swargaloka, first of all, they don't have pips and they don't have skin. And they're very large. When they fall, actually you get a river of mango juice. And when the mango juice dries in the sun, it turns to gold. So some things are given like that. So this chariot driver explaining all these wonderful things about the heavenly planets to this sage who was meditating. And then, so the sage said, okay, this all sounds very nice, but is there any drawback? Is there anything which is not good about that place? And the chariot driver said, yes, well, there's one thing. He said, the thing is that after some time, you have to come back. So that sage said, that's it. I don't want to go there then. What's the use of going somewhere? You have to come back. But rather, let's make the endeavor to go to a place where Krishna says himself, having gone there, you never return. Krishna says that, actually. So that would be my first. I mean, if you want to delve into these things, we can get into it a little bit. But why go somewhere where it's temporary? Just go for the real McCoy. And Krishna make it so easy as well. You just got to chant his holy name. What could be easier? That would be my immediate response. You want to know more about the planetary systems?
Well, then awareness would be useful.
It would be useful. You know, it's true about
some of us are weak. Some of us are weak.
No, but it don't matter if you're weak. Because Krishna says in the 40th verse of the 2nd chapter, he says, whatever you do, there's no loss or diminution. So it don't matter if you're weak. Just do what you can, and Krishna will give you the rest after some point. There's a verse where he says that as well. He says, I preserve what you have. So, and I carry what you lack, and I preserve what you have. So the thing is that we don't go backwards, you know. So just try your best, and Krishna will help you with the rest. Why you want to go to Swargaloka? It's a bit like going on holiday. Are you a married man, Ravi?
Yes, very much, very much.
You have children?
Two children, both married.
Okay.
And a grandchild.
Okay, so when you go on holiday with your family, what happens to your bank balance?
Gets depleted, of course.
It gets depleted. And then when the bank balance gets low, what do you have to do?
Head back home.
Yes, you have to head back home. So it kind of works like this, you know, that you work hard for 50 weeks of the year. So you can go on holiday for 2 weeks and relax a bit. And then the money runs out and you've got to come back again. It's a bit, so going to heavenly planets is a bit like going on holiday. You go on holiday, but the problem is back again. So why would you want to do that? That's my question to you. Why not go for the real McCoy? And Krishna gives that assurance so early in the Bhagavad Gita. In this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution. So whatever you do in this lifetime, pick up from where you left off. Imagine you could go on holiday like that. You know, you can go on holiday and you pick up where you left off. I hope the point is clear, Ravi Prabhu.
No, very much, very much.
Very much.
It's clear. But Krishna is the creator. He created these heavenly planets for a purpose.
Yeah.
So
But it's not
so
for us, new devotees. It's not for us. It's for those foolish persons who think they can enjoy separate from Krishna. It's for them. It's not for us. We want the real deal. You know, listen, why would you want $1 when you can have 100 million, thousand, zillion, godzillion dollars? I mean, what's wrong with you? You understand the point I'm making, no?
Of course, of course,
Yeah.
of course.
So don't go. That's my advice. Don't go there. Because then, you know, when you come back from a holiday, when you're driving home with your family from holiday, how do you feel?
Miserable.
Yeah. Why do you feel miserable? Because you've got to do all that stuff again.
Yeah.
Coming back, actually, do you want, I can describe for you how you fall from the heavenly planets. Do you want to hear that?
No, I think you've made the point.
That's very wise. That's not nice, actually, how you fall from the heavenly planets. It's not nice at all. So I hope you get the point.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I've
You
heard you well.
Okay.
Ravi Prabhuji, back to our boat. Jump back on
Yes,
our boat again.
yes.
Back on the boat. You know,
We'll
see,
sail together.
Prabhupada has given that boat, you know, and he's provided the ticket. All you have to do is just get on the boat and stay on the boat. That's all you've got to do, and it will take you to the destination. Are we done?
Yes.
Yeah. Hare
Yes,
Krishna.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I hope you're convinced.
Yes,
And a lot
thank
of
you.
time of Prabhuji. Is there any burning question? Prabhuji,
Yeah,
would you like-
Hare Krishna, can I say something?
You can.
Yeah, but two things, Prabhuji. You remind me of when the mango in this planet, it's as big as an elephant.
Yes. And the river that you get, you can't imagine that river. And also when it dries, when the mango just dries, it turns to gold.
Yes, yes.
But
And
the only problem is you have to come back from that place after some time.
so, Prabhuji, I wanted to ask, really and truly, if we are praying sincerely and surrender and so to Krishna, should we be thinking along these lines? Do we want to go here or do we want to go there? Should we not be just leaving that to Krishna?
Yes. Next question. Yes. Let's try our best and let's depend on Lord Krishna. And Lord Krishna, actually, Vishal was just quoting Mother Kunti Devi in her prayers in the Bhagavatam. Actually, she describes Krishna as, oh, most gentle personality. Krishna is so wonderful. It's just amazing what Krishna is actually. The most gentle, loving personality. And it's said, you know, I'm sure you've heard this story of when Vamandev took a couple of steps and covered the whole universe. Have you heard that story?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So Prabhupada used to say, if we take one step towards Krishna, he takes 10 steps towards us. And you've seen in this story how big Krishna's steps are, no?
Yeah,
Well,
very big.
we shouldn't bother with all this heavenly planets nonsense. It's a lot of nonsense.
yes.
Don't bother with that. Yeah, let's go for the
Yeah.
real McCoy. Why mess it out? Is that all right, Pranava?
Yes, I've been enlightened.
Pramila, is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji, it's such a wonderful discourse. Thank you so much.
I think are we done? We must be done. We've gone 19 minutes over. I apologize for keeping you all. I hope you don't mind. But I sometimes think the exchange is actually the most important part of the facilitation. Because when we share like this, actually, the realizations become so powerful. So I hope nobody minds. But I think Mother Kartika probably wants to close the session now.
No, totally very powerful, Prabhuji. That's the best part. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
We're happy to.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I think everybody enjoys your class and we don't mind overrunning, but we are very respectful for your time, Prabhuji. I'm really, really, really grateful.
I don't mind. This is what I live for. I live for these
Okay,
discussions.
we can go another hour.
No, I'm just keeping everybody. 'Cause it's late. In some places, it's quite late now, no?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, it
Okay.
is.
Avinash Prabhuji, would you like to close the session, please? Path Prabhuji is in India, so He isn't around, Prabhuji, but Prabhuji can close the session.
Hare Krishna. Sorry, I joined slightly later, but I actually whatever I got was quite good. You know, I got the nectar from yourselves, and you have answered quite a lot of questions there, especially from Ravi Prabhu. Ravi Prabhu is satisfied with his answer to go to heavenly planets, and
Don't do it.
We've been convincing him the whole week, so we were just waiting for you to tell
Okay.
what
I
he
think we've convinced him a little bit, maybe this much.
So yeah, so pure
Substantially
nectar,
more.
Prabhu. So yeah, pure nectar, Prabhu. So yeah, can we please glorify Shyamanand Prabhu with Hare Krishna Mahamantra, please, all of us. So Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna, Hare
Krishna
Hare,
Krishna, Hare
Hare Ram,
Hare
Hare Ram, Ram
Rama,
Ram.
Ram Ram,
Rama,
Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna.
Vancha kalpa tarubhya
Kripa
kripa
Sindhu
sindhubhya eva cha
Patitanam
patitanam
Pavanebhyo
pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo
Namo
namo
Namaha.
namaha.
Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki.
Ki jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
We hope you have a wonderful week.
Shyamanand Krishna Das Prabhuji ki.
Ki
Jai.
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 Thank you, Prabhuji, and you have a wonderful week. We'll see you next Sunday.
I'll look forward to it.
Yes,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Vinit Bhai, thank you for joining in. I hope you enjoyed the last 5-10 minutes.